Hey guys, and welcome back to NG Education YouTube channel. In today's video, we have a very special guest, Ollie Scott, who's here to talk about the Oxbridge history interview. Hi, Ollie.
Hiya, Sonny. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good. Great to have you back with us.
Yeah, no.
So, for those of you who haven't met Ollie before, the reason why I'm so excited to have Ollie here with us today is because Ollie graduated with a first-class degree in history from Daunting College, Cambridge. First class, for those of you who don't know, is basically the, you don't get better than that. Not only that, but Ollie also came third in his year of a couple hundred students at Cambridge. So, you already need to have, relative amount of intelligence to get to Cambridge and to survive it. To come, top three in your year is pretty impressive. So, if you're not going to get into Oxford or Cambridge after watching this video, then probably, maybe history is not for you.
Yeah.
But,
I can't promise that, but give it a go.
All right, Ollie. So we've got lots of other interviews we've done on history A levels and on applying to Oxbridge. This interview is specifically about the Oxbridge interview. So there are so many myths. Let's just start with the with kind of maybe the most common ones, which are you need to go to sort of an expensive private school, and your school teacher will be old friends with the Oxford Don and sort of kind of put a good word in. Does it really work like that?
I hope not. I don't. Not from my experience. I don't think.
Did you get in through? Did you get in through? Did you know somebody to get in, or?
No, I did not. If I did know someone, I probably wouldn't mention it here. No, I didn't. I just applied through the normal legal procedures, and that all worked out well. They've got now a lot of sort of university oversight, lots of access programs as well. It's certainly not perfect, but I think it'll be a lot better than the myths. I really wouldn't be put off by someone saying you have to be X type of individual to go here. That's hopefully, well, it isn't true. And hopefully we'll be able to find people who don't look like me, who, that wasn't a good answer, but...
No, fair enough. And look, this has been my experience and an experience for, all of NJ students who get in successfully or who, get in and got rejected. It's, you do not get in or get rejected because someone. It's because whether you impress the admissions officers or not. Now, it's as objective as possible, but of course, they're all human. So if someone really doesn't like you at the end of the day, just because the way you speak to them, or you look at them, or they had a bad day, or they had an argument with their partner, those things are outside of your control. But no one's. I think what you were trying to say is no one's going to disadvantage you because of the school you came from or the socio-economic background you're coming from.
It's also should be a fairly holistic process. You've got the interview, which is very important, but you'll have also had your results, your submitted work, an academic test, all manner of your teacher's reference. You should also have 2 interviews. You might well get pulled for a 3rd interview. So if you rub one person up the wrong way or they look at you slightly funny, that really shouldn't be a problem. But there's still, as you say, everyone's human. There are loads of great candidates who won't get in, so sort of have to.
Yeah, and like a lot of things. I think we as society perhaps put a lot of emphasis on people who are really successful and we sort of attribute to their special skills. And of course, there is perseverance and all of that, but a lot of success also just comes down to luck.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And being in the right place in the right time. But anyways, and just moving on from this sort of esoteric conversation about about life, what did they ask at an interview? So you've made it to the interview. What were the questions you were asked? Do you remember?
Some of them, yes. Well, I'll just say as a start is, again, versus some of these myths, it would be relatively formulaic. Insofar as you'll have submitted probably 2 pieces of work, and they'll probably ask you about those. The idea, and they'll tell you when you get in, is to try and replicate a kind of supervision or tutorial environment. And that's the way you're taught every week, is you submit an essay and they talk through it. So it's highly likely you'll be asked on your essays. Your personal statement, you may well be asked about that as well. And then you might just get some broad questions about, why you want to study history. Again, your personal statement should answer that anyway. You might be given something to read beforehand or something to flick through during the interview, and they could ask you on that as well.
So, okay, if we can just group them. So one type of questions is sort of why history, or kind of why this life direction. The second group are questions based on your personal statement and the books and stuff you mentioned there. So make sure to reread your personal statement and read everything you put in your personal statement.
Even get someone else to read it, and because they might come up with completely different questions to what you thought or what you expected. So that'd be worthwhile.
Well, that's really good advice. No, we'll come back to that in a minute. So second type of questions, kind of your personal statement based. Third type, they can give you extra reading just before the interview, right? So this is kind of an hour before you get there.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had some stuff during the interview where they showed me a few kind of cartoons. Can't remember what they were. I think it was something from The Spectator or something. But I mean, it was quite a short, sort of a few minutes on those. Or I know other friends who were given, sort of a page or two, even longer to flick through beforehand. Again, just don't panic and try to get through it all, I would suggest. And again, you're just sort of thinking about what the broad themes are. They're not going to ask you what fact was shown on page 7. Like, that's not going to happen. But yeah.
No, that's very true. And the fourth group is if your college asks before you get to the interview for extra submitted essays, and if you submit them, then they can sort of put it in front of you and kind of question whether would you still write the same thing? Would you still argue?
There are a lot, and they might just ask you to summarise the essay, summarise the key points. So be prepared to do that. My actual interview was effectively on the essays and some general questions. The other was on the personal statement and a couple of cartoons and some general questions. They don't tend to be very long, these interviews. I think they're normally about half an hour, 40 minutes, so it'll probably go by quite quickly.
Yeah, for you as a candidate. But it's sort of, is there quite a lot of flexibility? So do different students get different amounts of time at an interview, depending on the person's mood, or is it more standardized?
Again, it should be pretty standardized. I was there on the dot, was let out on the dot, and the next person was waiting. That's obviously only my experience, but I would imagine it's fairly standardized. You shouldn't be having someone getting an hour and a half and someone else getting 10 minutes. That won't happen.
No. And Ollie, a question I get all the time is, what if they ask me about something I haven't studied at school, right, or I haven't read? So how do you tackle that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What you probably want to do is ask, well, first of all, you can say, I'm not sure I've quite looked at that. I wouldn't leave it there. So as if you've watched the last video, we're talking about curiosity and kind of willingness to learn. If you just say, I haven't studied that, and then sit blankly, that's not going to be very helpful. So you can always preface it. But then if you can think of anything, you might say, oh, well, but I've, let's say they ask, have you studied Louis XIV? How did he maintain power? And you say, oh, well, I haven't actually studied him, but I have studied, I don't know, Stalin. That's maybe not the best comparison, but I've studied someone else, and they maintain power like this. Maybe some of those themes might apply. That could be one way of doing it. And you can always, in an interview, ask afterwards, have I answered your question? I wouldn't do that after every question, because you'll sound quite robotic. And they might say no, in which case they'll push you forward. Or you could say, can I have 15 seconds to think about this? And that will feel like a very long time when you're in there, but it really isn't. And it's much better than just blurting out the first thing you can think of.
Yeah, and that's interesting what you say. It also, in my experience, sends a very strong signal to the interviewers that you're actively thinking, using your brain to think about what they asked you.
I would almost want to manufacture a moment. I don't think you will, because I think they will ask something you don't know. But it's not just not a negative. I think it's a big positive if you can say, oh, let me think about that. Because again, they're trying to replicate a learning environment. and it's showing that you're able to reflect on what you know and answer a difficult question. When you get there, you're not going to learn by just knowing everything. So, yeah, you expect to have something that you don't know how to answer.
No, that makes sense. Ollie, and just jumping to a slightly different subject, just going back to the personal statement stage. So you submitted the personal statement.
Yes.
You probably had to submit the extra one or two essays. Is there much overlap between them? So maybe if you talk about in your personal statement, oh, I've done X, Y, Z in school, should you submit essays on those X, Y, Z?
I'd be inclined not to, if I could have a bit more breadth. I don't think it would really matter though. I wouldn't if you've done an essay on the causes of the French Revolution, and then in your personal statement you talk about the terror or something later, I think that'd be great. If your personal statement just maybe reiterates what you said in your essay, maybe find something else. But I don't think it should matter very much. I just submit what you're most comfortable talking about, and that's true of the personal statement as well.
Cool. Great. And Ollie, once you have your interview, and you said you have 2 interviews, right? With
I think it will depend on college, and Oxford do it slightly differently, where you're there for I think a week, and you have 2, and then you might be called for another. Cambridge, I think you'll have 2, possibly 3, I don't know, and then you might be called back in January if you get pulled. But most people, I think, will have 2 interviews at least.
Yeah, and that's also done because they're aware of the biases, human biases that happens, and you may be stressed in your first interview and really underperform, so they always want to give a second chance. Equally, if someone does really well, they want to make sure it's not a fluke and the person didn't just memorize the questions.
Yeah, exactly. And they might have an excellent candidate who's worked brilliantly on the test, maybe didn't do too well in the interviews, and they'll probably say, well, I think they're good enough. Maybe put them in a pool, another college can interview them, or we might even interview them again later. So yeah, as you say, to try and avoid any biases, or just you turned up on the wrong day.
Yeah.
Don't turn up on the actual wrong day. That would be very bad, I think.
No. No. So apart from the advice of turning up on time, what are kind of your top 3 pieces of advice to someone who is preparing for the interviews?
Yeah, I'd try and do a practice. This doesn't need to be with anyone who knows history. It might just it'd be useful to know if you have any tics, if you're constantly doing this or something, which might distract someone. And someone who doesn't do history at all will know that and be able to spot it quickly. So that would be helpful. I guess secondly, this is still an interview, so most kind of general interview advice will apply. The interview will start when you enter the door. That's your first impression. They'll probably ask you how you got here, or even something really boring about the weather. If you just blank out, that's maybe not the best first impression. So just remember that. They're going to be aware that you're nervous, so don't worry. But the interview begins and ends right at the start and right at the end. And I guess finally, reread your personal statement, get someone else to read it, get someone else to read your essays if you can, and really think about what they can ask you. But this is now going to sound contradictory. You don't need to overdo it. You can't predict what they're going to ask. You might have mentioned one name or one thing, and your interviewer happens to be the expert in that, and you barely prepared it. But tough. You're going to have to get on with it and just show some kind of on-the-fly analysis and work like we talked about earlier.
No, and just off the back of that, some people think they're clever, a bit too clever, and they try to game the system and think, well, if I'm interviewed by William Doyle, I should mention that I really love the spirit he's talking about. That's, at least in my experience, has been a very kind of dumb idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. So if you get told who's going to interview you, I don't think it's a bad thing to look them up and just have a look at what they've done. If anything, maybe to avoid some of those conversations. But yeah, I wouldn't be directing it towards what they've done, or saying, "Oh, I read your recent article in 2021." That would be a bit creepy. I wouldn't do that. Remember, most of these people, if they're a historian, an academic in their 30s, they'll have a pretty good, or later anyway, they'll have a very good grip of most periods of history anyway. So you don't need to worry too much. But yeah, don't shape your answers to what you think William Doyle will want you to say.
No, and like they've seen it all. They can really, they can really smell this kind of, these tricks a mile off.
Yeah.
So just as hard as it sounds, being natural is probably
authenticity is probably, if you can be authentic, that would be good.
Yeah, and look, and if you happen to be super interested in that topic, genuinely, that's fine.
If you've read, you might have read their book for all you know. It's possible. In which case, tread a bit carefully, I imagine. But yeah, if you're really interested in it, that's like a good thing, and that should show. It's more, I think, the point to avoid would be you're not interested at all in the French Revolution, but you find out that your interviewer is an expert there, and you try and direct the conversation to that topic. That would not be the way to go.
No. Ollie, on this note, this has been massively helpful. Thank you very much. Guys, for those of you who would like to watch some of the other videos with Ollie, check out the links here. There is also the newsletter that I mentioned as well, that where I share information on how you can sign up for unique CV building opportunities like conferences, seminars at some of the best universities. They're all free to sign up, and it can be done online, so great CV boosting thing. For now, Ollie, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
All right, have a great rest of your summer.
You too. Bye.
Cheers. Take it easy.